Freddy Krueger, everyone's favorite razor-gloved killer, and the main focus behind A Nightmare on Elm Street, one of the most popular slasher franchises in horror history. If you already know the story of the former child murderer turned revenge barbecue who returns from the dead to terrorize the teens of Springwood, Ohio in their sleep, then there's a good chance he's made an appearance during your dreams as well. But what if the danger was real? What if something you encountered in your nightmares actually caused you to never wake up? Today on Scream to Screen, we're recounting the horrifying true events that inspired Wes Craven's magnum opus, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Before we do that, be sure to subscribe to Graveyard Shift so you don't miss out on your favorite horror content, and let us know which true life stories of the macabre you want to see us cover next. From 1975 to 1979, in a small Southeast Asian country, the Communist Party Khmer Rouge conducted one of the most notorious, systematic persecutions and mass killings in world history, known today as the Cambodian Genocide. Under the leadership of General Secretary Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge were responsible for some 1.5 to 2 million deaths in Cambodia, nearly a quarter of the country's population at the time. The widespread violence and killing led thousands of men, women, and children to flee the country, with many finding political asylum in the United States. However, many of these refugees began suffering from chronic nightmares and even refused to sleep. Shortly thereafter, numerous men between the ages of 19 and 57 began dying during their REM cycle, despite being in otherwise healthy condition. Medical authorities coined this phenomenon as the Asian death syndrome. Wes Craven caught wind of these stories after reading several newspaper articles published by the LA Times between the late 70s and early 80s. Craven found it intriguing that the paper never drew a correlation between the genocide and the dream deaths of these traumatized survivors. Craven credits this series of articles as his main source of inspiration for the chilling concept behind A Nightmare on Elm Street. Long before he became the fedora-wearing originator of the ugly Christmas sweater, the image of Freddy Krueger was born in the mind of Wes Craven at a very young age, when an encounter with a disfigured homeless man scarred him for life. As Craven recounts the story, when he was just 11 years old, he noticed a Freddy-looking man walking along the sidewalk just past his apartment window. The vagrant must have sensed someone was watching him because he stopped dead in his tracks and made direct eye contact with the young Craven, who shot back into the shadows, startled. Once he thought the coast was clear, Wes stepped back to the window, only to find the stranger still leering at him and thrusting his head forward as if to say, "Yes, I am still looking at you." Then, without breaking eye contact, he advanced on Craven's apartment building entrance. Craven raced through the building to his front door just as he heard the intruder enter the building and start up the stairs. Luckily, his older brother was home at the time and stormed through the corridor wielding a baseball bat. But the mysterious stranger was gone. His memory, however, would remain with Craven for decades to come. With the image of Freddy thoroughly burned into his psyche, Wes Craven was able to fine-tune the rest of the Springwood slasher's most distinguishing features. First, characterizing the antagonist came easy to the director. He named him Fred Kreuger after a schoolyard bully that tormented him as a child, a form of revenge he actually recycled from earlier in his career. In his directorial debut, The Last House on the Left, Craven named the main antagonist Krug as a jab to his former menace. The inspiration behind Kreuger's trademark striped sweater came from one of Craven's favorite superheroes as a kid, DC Comics' Plastic Man. Craven liked the idea that whatever object Plastic Man transformed into still held the same color scheme as his uniform, and he wanted to use that concept for his own benefit. He decided on the festive red and green stripes after a 1982 article put out by Scientific American stated that these two colors, when paired together, were the most clashing to the human retina. Think about that next holiday season. When it came time for Freddy's notable weapon of choice, Craven knew he wanted something memorable but didn't want to use a knife as it was already all too common in the slasher genre. He stumbled upon the glove concept while watching his cat claw the sides of his couch one night. Seeing its claws retract reminded the director of saber-toothed tigers, and thought the idea of being attacked by a wild predator tapped into a primal fear embedded in the subconscious of people from all cultures, which was exactly what he was going for. Craven tossed around several viable options before finally landing on a glove with steak knives. He seriously considered a sickle while writing, but by the third or fourth draft of his script, the iconic bladed glove had become his favorite. Hey Graveyard Shift, let's take a moment to hear about CuriosityStream. CuriosityStream features thousands of documentaries and TV shows with such topics as history, nature, science, food, technology, travel, and more. With thousands of titles, many in Ultra HD 4K, including exclusive originals, CuriosityStream is available worldwide to watch on TV, desktop, mobile, and tablets. You can stream on any device, anytime, anywhere. Check out the link and code in the video description below. It's just $14.99 for the whole year. Wes Craven began writing the screenplay for A Nightmare on Elm Street just after he'd finished production on Swamp Thing in 1981. He pitched the script to several major studios, including Paramount and Universal, but was rejected. Disney was the first studio to show interest, but they wanted to tone down the content to make it more kid-friendly. Graciously, the beloved director declined their offer. He was haunted by the story of the immigrant boys who were so terrified of their past experiences. He knew that he had to stay true to the film's bleak and haunting themes. Finally, Craven found a home with the fledgling independent corporation New Line Cinema, which agreed to produce the film despite only working in distribution at that time. That decision ultimately paid off, big time, when in 1984, A Nightmare on Elm Street became the company's first commercial success. Although New Line has since produced more profitable films, including the Lord of the Rings franchise and It Chapter 1, the success of the first Elm Street and its subsequent 8 sequels appropriately nicknamed the studio the house that Freddy built. When it came to casting the coveted role, Craven initially sought out a bigger man with real burn scars. With this in mind, he met with hundreds of actors, including Kane Hodder, long before he donned Jason Voorhees' iconic hockey mask in the Friday the 13th series. However, he couldn't find someone with the sense of ferocity and malevolence required to portray Freddy Krueger. That is, until he met the legendary Robert Englund. Though Englund was smaller in stature than what Craven was looking for, his tenacity and willingness to go to dark places mentally proved to the director that he truly understood Freddy Krueger, and the rest was history. Titled Freddy's Revenge and released almost exactly 1 year after the first film, the second installment in the Nightmare saga took a slight detour from the dream world for another supernatural phenomenon, as it depicts Freddy possessing the spirit of the main protagonist, Jesse, before manifesting in real life for a climactic pool party massacre. Even though David Chaskin would eventually write the script, screenwriter Leslie Boehm first pitched a concept that also utilized possession as a plot device. In his version, Freddy would possess the unborn fetus of a pregnant woman as an homage to Rosemary's Baby. But considering one of the executives in charge was pregnant herself at the time, the idea understandably upset her, and New Line Cinema opted for Chaskin's approach. Despite not participating in the first sequel because he didn't want the original to evolve into a franchise, Wes Craven returned to co-write A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, with every intention of ending the series. Luckily for all of us, his plan backfired as the success of the film effectively solidified further sequels. Craven's initial premise for the film was to have Freddy cinematically invade the real world and haunt the cast and crew who were filming the new Nightmare on Elm Street sequel. If this plot sounds familiar, that's because it should. Although New Line Cinema passed on this idea, it later became the focal point for the series' 7th installment, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. The creative process for A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, suffered due to the untimely Writers Guild of America strike in 1988, forcing director Renny Harlin and the producers to improvise frequently while filming. Actors Lisa Wilcox and Andras Jones, who play Alice and Rick respectively, wrote a lot of their own dialogue, and Harlan made up many of the nightmare sequences on the spot rather than use what was written in the script. Despite these obstacles, and against all odds, the film became a massive success and ranked #1 at the box office in the US its first 3 weeks in theaters. The Dream Master's successor presented screenwriter Leslie Boehm a second chance to bring his vision to light. While his original pregnancy possession pitch for the franchise's first sequel was rejected years prior, he was finally given the opportunity to resurrect it for A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, which features Freddy using the dreams of an unborn baby to claim new victims. Released in August 1989, it is one of the final slasher films released in the 1980s. While A Nightmare on Elm Street's 6th installment wasn't actually titled Nightmare on Elm Street, opting for Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare instead, that wasn't everyone's main issue with the film. It was met with mainly negative reviews because it was just horrible from start to finish. Additionally, it took major leaps to entertain its audience, including a publicity stunt put on by New Line Cinema, which held a mock funeral for Freddy at LA's Hollywood Forever Cemetery. The Los Angeles mayor at the time, Tom Bradley, even declared September 13th as Freddy Krueger Day. Just like Wes Craven's unsuccessful attempt to put an end to the series when he wrote Dream Warriors, New Line intended for Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare to be the last installment in the franchise. Only this time, it was Craven who would carry on Freddy's legacy. Made for the celebration of the 10th anniversary of the first Nightmare on Elm Street, Wes Craven's New Nightmare took the series' antagonist back to his roots. With Craven in the driver's seat once again, he was able to portray Kreuger closer to what he had imagined, darker, more menacing, and less of the comical trope that he had morphed into in recent entries. To reinforce this, the character's makeup and outfit were enhanced, adding a long trench coat to his wardrobe and redesigning the signature glove to have a more organic look, with fingers resembling bones intertwined in muscle tissue. Up next would be Freddy vs. Jason. Arguably the biggest crossover event in horror cinematic history can be attributed to us, the fans, as public desire to see an epic showdown between the two slasher powerhouses influenced New Line Cinema and Paramount Pictures to cut a deal, although it would take some time. Discussions for Freddy vs. Jason began in 1987, but neither studio could agree on a story or secure rights to use each other's characters. Despite being in high demand, it would be another 16 years and 3 more Friday the 13th sequels before we finally got to see the Springwood slasher and the killer of Camp Crystal Lake duke it out on the big screen. In early 2008, filmmaker Michael Bay announced that his production company, Platinum Dunes, would reboot the original A Nightmare on Elm Street, much to the chagrin of Wes Craven, who expressed displeasure with the remake. Even without his blessing, Michael Bay and director Samuel Bayer set out to pay homage to what the series creator had started, abandoning Kreuger's wisecracking demeanor for a grittier, more brutally horrifying menace that Craven initially intended. Even though it's been more than 10 years since we've last seen the bladed gloved slice and dice on the big screen, talks of another nightmare are always in development. Most recently, Wes Craven's estate reacquired the film rights in late 2019 and has begun work on resurrecting the franchise. Today, they are reportedly looking for both feature film pitches and concepts for a possible HBO Max series. Well, that's the story of how a phenomenon of sudden unexplained death syndrome and a chance encounter with a mysterious derelict spawned a 9-film franchise, complete with a television series, dozens of novels, comic books, and a major horror crossover event. So what do you think? Would you like to see Freddy Krueger return to the silver screen and possibly your nightmares, knowing what you know now? What other notorious cinematic killers should the Springwood slasher go up against? Let us know in the comments below if you have the courage. Tell us what stories you want to hear more about. And instead of going to sleep tonight, head on over to Graveyard Shift for more deep dives into your favorite horror films. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe for more videos from The Graveyard Shift.